Hi, my name is John Ervin. I'm the pastor of Francisco General Baptist Church here in Francisco, Indiana. The sermon you're about to watch is called Foundations of Service. It is the implication of this message to teach Christians how God came in the form of Jesus Christ to teach us how our purpose in life is to serve them rather than have them serve us in our personal ministries. Christ came, and we see in Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45, how Christ demands that we who want to be first, who want to be leaders in the church, must first become last, and the servants of those that we serve. I hope this message does a lot for you in your personal life, and I hope that it blesses you. Please feel free to share this message with as many people as it can bless. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you really, really soon. I am a bit torn this morning, mostly because I'm trying to filter out in my heart the direction I believe God is trying to lead us this morning. Originally this week, I had it on my heart to discuss the foundations of service. What is Christian service? And how does it get done? And how do we actively understand service rather than just doing good deeds? Because there is a difference between doing good deeds for people and then doing what we call Christian service within the church. But I'm feeling a little bit more emotional and led into more of a understanding of why we are here to begin with, of who is Jesus Christ, of who is God, and why these are such wonderful ideas that we need to have understood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter through by teaching on the foundations of service. And because you guys are so smart, you don't need a full-fledged sermon into all of these aspects. You guys got this. But we're going to mix a little bit of these two concepts of who these ideas represent, what place we have for our faith in Jesus, why it is so foundationally important for the person, and then we're also going to talk about the foundations of service. I want to talk about first what is Christian service. I already made the statement that there is a difference between good deeds, helping somebody in need, and then there is Christian service. So what is the difference? Well, Christian service is any intentionally dedicated time so that you spend modeling the attitudes, the principles, and teachings of Jesus in what we call in our English word service, not time spent in a sanctuary or a Bible lesson surrounding. But no, service means actual work, or more traditionally labor, effort that you've put into for teaching and leading by example for others to benefit. That is what the word service in the biblical context means. Service means laboring, putting in effort by the differences of teaching and setting examples that others may benefit from you. This is Christian service. And when you do this, you're doing it to a specific group. You're doing it to God's creation, which can be split up into three categories. This is humankind. This is the number one concept of God's creation, because we are the only ones in God's creation that have His Spirit. We are in His image. But then there are creatures who were not created in God's image, but have been put on this earth for us to care for. When Adam and Eve were placed in the Garden of Eden, it was Adam's job to name all of the animals in the Garden of Eden. And so we understand there is a care for the creatures of this world that we have to take responsibility for. And then the plants. Back in the original calling of Adam, he said, to every green thing I give you for food. But in order to do that, you have to take care of these things. When Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, their sons were split up into two categories. I love this beautifully because it was Adam and Eve's job to take care of their sons Cain and Abel. So they had the humankind part. That was their responsibility. But then their two sons, one was a farmer, Cain. He was a farmer of the field. So he was taking care of the plants. But then Abel, he was taking care of the creatures because he was a shepherd. So beautifully woven in the first fabric of the very first family, we have the separation of taking care of humankind, creatures, and plants. This is the service of God's creation. And we do this, we take care of these things without receiving reward. We do not expect anything from it. If you would not do it for free, if you would not do it for just the led inclination of your heart, then you shouldn't do it. That's not Christian service. If you would just be motivated, if you would just be content in doing what you're doing without having anything paid back into you, whether it be benefits like recognition, people knowing who you are, if you don't care about any of that, then you are committing Christian service because the purpose is to lead people back to God. That's the primary purpose. We're here, when we come here, it should never be about what we want to see done in our lives, but it should be about what God can put in us that we can spread into others so that they come to know Him. It's all about His Word. It's all about what He wants in our lives. It's never about what we feel. Otherwise, it dismisses the definition of Christian service. And we have to do each of these things with the attitudes of Jesus. If we don't like the people, we don't like the people. But if we don't like the situation, it doesn't matter if we don't like the situation. It could be as simple as taking out the garbage. Right? Nobody wants to do the hard jobs like smelling like garbage. But when it's about the service and the attitudes of Jesus, Jesus in His primary example got on His hands and knees onto the level of a lowly servant to wash the dirty, rotten feet of His disciples. It was the job that nobody wanted, and He took it up willingly, eagerly. Why? Because it was service to His creation. He was setting an example, what He expects you and I to do for one another. And we're called to different forms of this service. You may have a green thumb. I can tell you right now, no way do I have a green thumb. It just doesn't happen. I kill things. I kill plants. That's just what I do. And I grew up on a farm background. My stepdad, he had me tilling his garden until he realized he wasn't growing a lot of his crops. He pulled me off of that, and then I had to take the hay and put it around all of the different crops that he was growing in the winter because he wanted to keep the ground nice and cool, nice and warm, what have you. I never quite understood a lot of that, but not my gift. Creatures, I only one animal I like. One animal. And this is not my choice. This is just, I feel comfortable only around this one animal. Cat. Okay? And it can't even be a lot of cats. It has to be one singular cat. Okay? I have enough love for animals for one individual cat. I can tolerate animals, but I'm not a caregiver of creatures. I love people. I do. I absolutely love people. But I have issues when I'm trying to help them, when I'm trying to serve people. I have issues that come off as quirky. I have things that come off that I'm still dealing with that rubs people the wrong way, but I still want to be around people. I have an affinity to love people. So I focus on that part of who I am in God's creation into my Christian service. I want to have my life benefit other people's lives, so that they can know Jesus the way I have met Him and come to know Him in my life and how He has transformed me. We're going to be looking at the Gospel according to Mark chapter 10 this morning. The Gospel according to Mark chapter 10. And we're going to be looking at a few verses 42 through 45. And we're going to see the very epitome that Christ gives us to follow in terms of this Christian service definition. And when he gives this, the context of this passage is that we have the sons of thunder, John and James, and their mom actually intercedes on their behalf and tells Jesus, Jesus, these are my sons. Can each of them stay at your right hand and your left hand? Can they just be your two right-hand man? Let me tell you, when we were growing up and when we were going to school, and the last thing we wanted was our parents to make an uncool statement in front of our friends, we were not the first ones with that impression. We were not the first people embarrassed by our parents. I know I've been embarrassed by my parents countless times in front of people. Don't say that in front of my friends. Don't do this in front of the church people. Dad, I don't want you to tell Brother Danny and Sister Judy that story about when I ran away and I got lost on a railroad and I couldn't handle all that. So we all get embarrassed by our parents, but James and John, their mom, flat out asks in front of all of the disciples, can these two be your right-hand man? And Jesus, he gives them the qualifications. He says, can you drink from the same cup I drink? Can you be baptized with the same baptism I am baptized by? And they respond, we can, Lord. And then Jesus tells them, it is not my right to give you. That's not my right to give you. It belongs to the Father. It's already, in other words, what he wants these two fishermen boys and their mother to understand. He cannot change the plan now. He created James and John for two important purposes that have already been set in motion. And he cannot change who James and John were created to be. So he's letting them all know they have a purpose already. And whether it's at my right or my hand, it is not what has been predetermined by God the Father. It has not been predetermined that way. It's already been set in stone the way you've been created to be. And you just have to simply walk within that creation. We all have been created for an individual purpose. When we come to know Christ and we come to accept Him willingly, then that purpose becomes aware to you. You become more understanding to what you're good at, what you're not good at. And you try to stay away from what you're not good at, hoping nobody notices you stink at that. And you focus on what you are good at. And you pray that that is what people see and get blessed by. So what this understanding leads into is Jesus sets them aside, brings them in after this issue, and he says, look, I don't want you guys arguing amongst yourself who's greater and who's bad and who's worse. This idea of being at somebody's right hand isn't what you need to be focused on. And so in Mark chapter 10, verse 42 through 45, Jesus says this, and Jesus called them to him, his disciples, and said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you, you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be the slave of all, or servant of all. For even Son of Man, Jesus Christ, that's who that's referring to, himself, the Son of Man is Jesus Christ, came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. In other words, Jesus sets his disciples aside because the reason James and John and their mom wanted them to be at the right hand of Jesus is because that was a status of importance. They were looking to climb, in other words, the corporate ladder of success. They wanted to find the American dream before the American dream existed. Okay? And so what happens is Jesus says, your mind isn't right. In the rest of the world outside what you're learning in the gospel, let them worry about having authority over people and making themselves great and building a name for themselves. But for you as my disciples, do not seek that. It is wrong for you to look and see a position that you weren't created for. It is not good that you try to elevate yourselves for the sake of yourself. But rather, what you need to do, if you really want to make an impact on people, if you really want to be a leader, here's what leadership is. Putting yourself at the bottom of the barrel, so that you can have other people stand on your shoulders and you try to push those people up. It's all about helping other people get to be where they need to be. In Sunday school this morning, we were talking about the early church and how Barnabas originally started discipling the Apostle Paul. And how when they got together, Paul, every time he tried to preach the gospel, he always ended with somebody wanting to kill him. But then once he got discipled and got taught about how a Christian minister should act and behave when displaying the gospel by Barnabas, people started listening to the Apostle Paul. He started to grow. And then eventually, in Acts chapter 16, we see this growth division happen, where Paul now has to become his own person. He's called to be a missionary and a church planter of the church. So he has to separate from Barnabas, who is still called to do what he did for Paul, to take a future young pastor and to disciple the young pastors of the church. Two different callings. So their ministry splits away and changes their relationship, but doesn't get rid of it. Well, why are you bringing that up, John? Because everybody, Barnabas included, when you take on somebody to follow after you, when you want somebody to lead, your ambition is very similar to that of your children. Nobody has their child and looks at their child the day they're born and says, I want you to turn out exactly like me, and I want you to have all of my flaws. Nobody ever says that about their children. Nobody looks at that beautiful, innocent baby and says, I'm going to ruin you. You want better for your child than what you had. Right? And this is the same of what Jesus is teaching. You don't want these people to be at your level. You want them to exceed you. Whenever a pastor takes on a church, he doesn't want the people in the church to meet him at their level. No, every image of a good pastor wants the people in his church to exceed them. I want people in this church that get discipled in this church to understand the gospel deeper than I want you to get to a point where you have a richer relationship. Because I'm leading you to the gospel. I'm leading you to Jesus, who is the real leader. Has nothing to do with who stands up behind the sacred wooden desk. Each and every one of you can take a turn up here, and it's not about the person behind it, but about where we're pointing others to Jesus, God the Father. And so what we take away from this is that Jesus gives a whole new definition of leadership. He says, if any of you seek to be first, you must be last and servant of those who are going higher. You have to push other people up. You can't be about trying to help each other up and hopefully get enough leverage to pull people up there. You want people to get to new levels that you haven't gotten to yet. When you help people get to where they need to be, they will help you get to where you need to be. Has nothing to do with you, has everything to do with what God is doing in you and in your life. Let me tell you, one of the most beautiful things about the Word of God is that we don't just have the successes of who we call the biblical heroes. We don't just have their successes. If we did, there would be a problem. But we have their failures as well. Abraham, who we call the father of faith. How many times did he lie about his wife? How many times did he lie in general? How many times did he lie to kings? And just plainly to their face. But how many times did God support him? Why? Because it wasn't about the mistakes he made, his flaws. It was about the successes. It was about what he was good at, about what God could use his goodness for to change the lives of those around him. So when Jesus pulls his disciples aside, he gives them a whole new definition of success. And this is the first step of us today. If we want to be impacting in the church, if we want to be useful in the church, We have to redefine what it means to have a spiritual success. It is not what the rest of the world means. It's not about how many people you got following you. It's about the quality of who you're helping and what you're helping them get to. If it's not getting them to a closer relationship with God, then it's not helping them. I'll say that again. If you're not helping people get to a closer relationship with God, you're simply just not helping them. Okay. There are several people in the world who seek out their own ideas, who seek their own images of what they want to do. But if it is not with God as the cornerstone, if it's not with Jesus helping them in their life, then it just doesn't matter. It's going to fade anyway. Jesus, God the Father, are the only one who stands the test of time. This word, it is covered in blood. It is proven to change human lives for the better. It has changed whole cultures. It has saved broken families. And nothing you and I can do could ever stand against that kind of quality. It's all about this, or it's about absolutely nothing. So when we change our idea of what success is, it goes back to this cornerstone. What is success? How many people did you help get to where they want to be with God? That is how you determine this. It's not about the number, it's about the quality. How far did you help these people get to? That's why I don't like the idea of these mega churches, because first of all, there is no way those pastors have a relationship with everybody in those churches. It's just not possible. It's not humanly possible. Okay? And then second of all, when you get to this idea of success, they're all about the numbers. We get 1,000 people into this. We can have this kind of stadium. We get to 20,000. We get to this giant. Get to have all this praise band and all these other stuff. It's all about numbers when you get into that ball game. But when it comes down to success, it's not about how many people come in. It's about the people who do come. Where do you help their lives get to? Are you helping them become real disciples, or are they just average every week churchgoers that fill a pew for an hour? I would like to think we are all discipleship minded. We all want to get better and farther than where we came from in terms of our relationship with Jesus. Where you came to Jesus when you accepted salvation should not be where you are 20 years from then. You should have a deeper and more inclusive love for Him, and you should have already discipled a few people on your own. Well, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a minister. I'm not an evangelist. I'm not a pastor. It doesn't matter. The Great Commission wasn't for pastors and evangelists and missionaries. It was for Christians. You are all called to disciple somebody else. I'm called to disciple other people. I'm called to disciple people. And I failed in discipling some people. Can I just tell you that right now? Let's alleviate the stress of discipleship making for a minute. Everyone thinks, well, I'm not going to do a good job with this discipleship thing. You're going to fail. That's the whole point. Because it's not about your flaws. It's about what you are attempting to do. It's about the good things, the strengths that you have that God's given you. Your ability to smile. Your ability to share a little bit about your life. Your ability to make the best cup of tea in the whole area. Okay? It's all about these individual things. And that's what you use to bring others to a closer understanding of God. Even if it means they learned something that you yourself didn't know. They will come back and gladly share that information with you. To which you should rejoice with them, because it's the equivalent of seeing your child go off to college. When we understand that success isn't about numbers, but it's about quality, we understand that we are not living up to par over half of the time as humans. I'm not living up to par half the time as a human. You're not living up to par half the time as a human. Because when we are servants of all, that means there is no division. There is no division. We're here to serve everybody, including the people that make us uncomfortable, the people that we would like to judge by appearance. God didn't do that. Jesus didn't do that. He ate and drank with publicans and sinners. He didn't discriminate like the Pharisees did. He wanted people to come to know him because he knew that when they interacted with him, eventually there would be a change. If you are a Christian saved by grace and you have the new Spirit, the Holy Spirit living inside of you, Ezekiel chapter 36 says that God has removed your heart of stone and replaced it with a heart of flesh. In the book of Ephesians, it says that you're a whole new creation. If that's really the truth in you, and if you have accepted salvation on those terms, you have changed. Your life should not look the same way. You should be doing things differently, speaking differently. When I was growing up, when I was in high school and junior high, I used a lot of slang. I talked in a lot of ways that now just give me nausea when I hear modern day people talking. Because I can't follow those things anymore. Because that's not in me. I wanted to be understood by everybody. Old people, young people, everybody in between. And the only way I can be understood by everybody is to talk the way anybody can understand me. And I can talk like this, and some of you still don't understand me. That's okay. I'm used to that. That's fine. But the whole point comes from being different. You transform yourself. And when you've been transformed, you've been given a level of influence. Dr. John C. Maxwell, who is known around the country as the leadership guru, has written over 66 books on the ideas of leadership. And he was also a very well-known pastor in the Wesleyan Church. What he says and gives an identity of leadership, what is leadership? It's influence. Nothing more, nothing less. If you don't have influence with other people, you're not going to make an impact in that person's life. So don't try. Because you can talk to them all day, but if you have no influence in that person's life, guess what? It's going to go in one ear, out the other. Build a relationship with that person first, and then pray over time they see the good strengths in you, not the flaws in you, and that they benefit from the strengths. And that you can help them in that way and serve them, and that you help them get farther than where you are. But when you understand leadership not as the pinnacle of success, but as the foundation building block underneath, you understand that you have to be last in order to be first. When Hannah and Presley and I first came here, we had our very first church dinner. And I got a lot of unwanted attention because no matter how many times you all pled me and prodded me, sometimes with a fork, to go fill my plate, I would not do it. I had to wait till everyone else got their food at the dinner. Why? Because I had just become your supposed leader. I had just become your pastor. It has to be understood that if I want to do this job, if I want to fulfill my calling here adequately, I cannot be the person who goes first. I refuse. Flat out refuse. I should be helping you all go first. I should be helping you guys rest more. I should be helping you guys get to where you need to be. Why? Because I'm supposed to be that guy that says, it's not about me, but about where you all end up with God. And I take this verse so seriously. At home, if you eat dinner with us, if you guys get invited over to dinner, which I think a lot of you need to come over for dinner, Hannah makes good pot roast. I'm just going to play that out there. You don't even ask first. Just show up for dinner one night. Out of three out of 7 nights, there's going to be a pot roast of some sort. So just show up, and then I'll take the rap with Hannah. Don't worry about it. It's fine. All right, but when you get to this point of leadership, it's about the leader going last so that people get what they need first. And when you get to this understanding, you go into a servant leadership mindset. It's all about serving as Jesus served. When Jesus, I've made the reference already, when he gave the ideology to his disciples what service meant, he went and took the form of a very lowly servant. Now, there were different classes of servants back in these New Testament biblical times. You had your nobility servants who actually had really nice clothes. Yeah, they had nicer clothes compared to a loincloth, is what that means. Meaning they probably just had a sheet but no pants. Okay? That was nobility servants, and they got to do more tedious jobs. They got to be a little bit educated to write so that they could transcribe the thoughts of their servants, their masters. And so they would do these little things. They would get little scraps of fruit from the table. But then you had your lowly servants who did the jobs like scrape out the manure, stomp on the manure. You had the guys who did the poison taste testings because they weren't anybody. They die poisoned, and then you throw the body into the heap with the manure. And for the other guy to shovel. And then, so you just continue this idea, but he took the lowly servant of washing feet. Now, as somebody who is supposed to be important, as Jesus Christ was, as a rabbi, and as Messiah, as he had already been identified by his disciples as, he took that lowly form to show them that I didn't come to be served. And if I, who actually created the universe, didn't come to be served, what makes you think you ought to be?